My original plans was to review this episode as part of Valentine's Half Month 6, but at the same time, that was mainly looking at this episode as a Sheen and Libby episode, despite the fact that Libby is mostly captured, and the only time that she and Sheen do something is dance together at school. So this is mostly a Sheen episode rather than that. And to be perfectly real with you, this episode is basically everything that Planet Sheen isn't. For me personally, this episode alone, after watching it multiple times, really shows that it has aged a lot more better than Planet Sheen. Even though that some people may say that this episode isn't one of the best of Season 3, but at the same time, for what it is, it really feels like that it's basically a Sheen episode done right in comparison to its betrayal from the spin-off. The premise is that Lu Li has been practicing on becoming a powerful warrior, but unfortunately he's not the chosen one because Sheen took that place, and the only way for him to become the chosen one is to defeat Sheen in a battle. When it comes to Sheen, he really wants to dance with Libby at the school dance competition, but at the same time he can't dance whatsoever, so he goes to Jimmy to use one of his inventions in order to dance perfectly with Libby at the school dance. Unfortunately, at the dance competition, ninjas appear to steal Libby away from Sheen, which is mainly all part of Lu Li's plan in order to have him face Sheen in order to become the chosen one. Jimmy made an invention called the Ultra Shock Dance Teacher 8000, where it allows Sheen to dance, and after doing research of Kung Fu, he makes a disc involving Kung Fu in order to give Sheen all the abilities of Kung Fu. If you ask me, guys, this episode is the definition of what a Sheen episode should be when it comes to his comedic timing and the fact that it's done correctly when it comes to the characters all around him. Mainly Jimmy's invention, along with every single character being put into place on making an episode that is actually humorous and entertaining to sit through in comparison to the other Planet Sheen episodes that did the opposite. Yu Lee, even though that he is still technically a Jimmy Neutron villain, at the same time, he's not really the enemy of Jimmy, he's mainly the enemy of Sheen, and for how he's portrayed when it comes to his flying abilities and how he is that insanely goofy, you would expect that when it comes to antagonists from this show, but at the same time, with this being an antagonist of Sheen, it really feels like in a way it's not supposed to be that serious, and it's mainly in a way of just trying to make a Sheen episode done right. Because to tell you the truth, I didn't find this character bad. He was actually humorous, and his motivations make sense considering that he wants to be the chosen one. When it comes to Sheen being the chosen one, I did saw the Jet Fusion special multiple times, and I understand where they're coming from when it comes to these elements. And to tell you the truth, just by seeing how Sheen is the chosen one, to tell you the truth, for how he was established in that special and how he's taking his role as the chosen one seriously in this episode, in a way it actually works when it comes to the setting of the location that they go to when it comes to Shangri-La. Believe me when I say this, is that even though that Shangri-La only has 2 episodes being a part of, mainly the Jet Fusion special, which is mostly a 44-minute special and not an episode, and this episode alone. Granted, this place may be a little over-exaggerated when it comes to the warships of Carl and Sheen, but to tell you the truth, considering that they are mostly done in a comedic way and mainly being in a goofy setting when it comes to Sheen being the chosen one, while Carl obviously being into llamas, believe me, this is basically Jet Fusion material that happened in the Jet Fusion special, even though that the majority of the special that Jimmy was carrying, while his friends were left in the sidelines in the second half. And with this episode having Sheen take the main spotlight while Jimmy uses his invention to help out Sheen, to tell you the truth, if Jimmy was the main character of this episode, he would have ended the episode way earlier, like 11 minutes tops. And considering that Sheen is mainly a main objective of what the antagonist needs, to tell you the truth, if the antagonist was focusing on Jimmy, then I'm pretty sure it wouldn't make any sense. Not to mention that Jimmy going to Shangri-La and doing stuff at Shangri-La wouldn't make much more sense, considering that the only reason he went to Shangri-La was mainly after the climax from the Jet Fusion special. To be really honest with you, this episode really has the best jokes executed perfectly when it comes to the characters' interactions. There was a subplot that Cindy wants to dance with Jimmy at the dance, and considering that Jimmy is against that and he doesn't pay attention to Cindy, I want to keep this in mind. I'm fully aware that King of Mars have a plot centering around the two, with Jimmy not giving Cindy any credit, and with one mistake that she did, she instantly gets fed up. While I actually show sympathy towards Cindy for how she's being treated by Jimmy, at the same time, this dynamic has been going back and forth to the point that it would probably still happen in the 4th season, despite the fact that they would tie the knot between the relationship of Jimmy and Cindy. But believe me when I say this, there's a reason onto why I'm not revealing out Dawn spotlights, because in all honesty, it's making me overwhelmed on thinking of the idea of the season 4 episode of Jimmy and Betty Quiverant having an episode together. Well, for me personally, it really feels like that they just didn't know what to handle Betty Quiverant enough. So once I get to that episode, it would have to be in the mindset of understanding the motivation and execution of that episode. So reviewing this episode is honestly the better alternative. Getting back to the main plot, the montage of Master Han training Sheen on Kung Fu in 24 hours. I am fully familiar with this montage that has been done in multiple montages of a character training, mainly from the first episode of Drake and Josh and the montage in Kung Fu Panda. And to tell you the truth, the fact that this episode came out before that film really shows that they really wanted this to be a lot more humorous, in a way where it showcases that when Sheen tries to train in 24 hours, it's honestly humorous. Believe me when I say this, there are so many good jokes in this episode that really makes it worth watching in comparison to Planet Sheen. For the battle between Sheen and Yi, in comparison to the other battles from Jimmy Neutron, with this being semi-serious on saving Libby, and what I mean by that is the fact that it's supposed to be comedic, mainly in the way that Sheen is not really much of a fighter even after the 24 hours of training, and the fact that Jimmy wasn't able to fix his invention in time and he needs an adjustment to have his invention to work. Sheen is unable to face off Yi while Yi isn't even breaking a sweat. Believe me, when he starts flying and is that aggressive towards Sheen, to tell you the truth, if I really took this character seriously, then I would have probably expected more from him, like the other characters from this show. But to tell you the truth, with this episode just being its own thing, you shouldn't expect much, especially when Jimmy got a rupee from Libby in order to have his invention operate. Carla accidentally put the dancing disc in rather than the kung fu disc, which leads to Sheen dancing. And to tell you the truth, when Jimmy stated early on in this episode that Sheen can't dance to save his life, Carla said to Sheen, Sheen, dance for your life." It's great comedy, especially when he tries to show Sheen of how many fingers he's holding up, and Sheen said November. This episode came out in November, by the way, and that's honestly good comedy when it comes to the timing of the joke and the fact that this episode aired in November to make the joke work. And when Libby told Sheen that this is your girlfriend talking to you, which really hit a spark in Sheen, which gave him the eye of the tiger, he manages to defeat Yui in his dancing abilities. In all honesty, with this being a comedic way to end off a battle, it's really done in a way that really makes this episode one of the best when it comes to my perspective. It's really shows that the people who didn't like this episode either took it a little too seriously or just expected more from it. With this episode being less of a Sheen and Lippy episode and mostly a Sheen episode, to tell you the truth, the reason why I include this review for Valentine's Half Month 6 is mainly the fact that I wanted to fill in the schedule, mainly the fact that the other videos planned for that, despite the ones that I ended up using, was just trying to make the schedule a lot more interesting. Believe me when I say this, I do regret on scrapping it, but at the same time, I was too overwhelmed. So this is mainly on opening positions, on reviewing episodes that weren't scheduled for Valentine's Half Month 6, with a possibility of having those positions being filled for next year's schedule. But at the same time, we don't know for sure, and to tell you the truth, reviewing this episode along with the bloopers that are also humorous, it's the best decision on reviewing this episode now instead of next year. I'm giving this episode an 8.5 out of 10.